we are getting ready to move on to our next session and next speaker. I think she is already here. So please allow me to introduce Professor Gloria Mark, Chancellor's Professor Emerita, Department of Informatics, UC Irvine. Welcome, Dr. Mark, Professor Mark. And I know that again, another interesting topic on how AI will impact our attention and all the things that will come with it. So I will let you take it on from here, and looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So, yes, I am trained as a psychologist. I've been studying how technology has has influenced our lives, and I've been very fortunate to be studying this when certain technologies have emerged. And we happen to be at a cusp here with the AI. Let me just. Okay. So, we're in a new era, and this new age of AI is presenting significant challenges for us. So I have been looking at AI. I've been looking at some effects of AI, and I'm also going to project based on 20 plus years of studying tech use where I think we are heading. But let me start by presenting a paradox. And the basic paradox is that AI, along with any other digital tool, was designed to extend our human capabilities. So to enable human beings to do more, but no matter how much additional information we can produce, and AI makes it a lot easier to produce information, ultimately, the human mind is still a bottleneck. There's just a limitation to how much information human beings will be able to manage. And here's the reason, and this is a bit of psychology. The mind has a limited pool of resources. We would like to think of ourselves as being superhuman, but unfortunately, nobody is superhuman. You can think of this as a tank. I like to use the metaphor of having a tank of cognitive resources. It's also called attentional capacity. And you might start your day with a full tank. You can be very energetic and focus very clearly. But as the day wears on, there are certain things we do that affects our ability to pay attention and focus. And of course, human beings need to pay attention to be efficient, to essentially maintain our competitive edge. There's actually neuroscience evidence that's behind this, where brain imaging shows that actually the blood flow in the brain changes as people are focusing, as they're using their cognitive resources. So blood flow in the brain is actually a good metabolic index of how our cognitive resources are being used. So I have been studying tech use for many, many years. Now, traditionally, what psychologists do is they bring people into a laboratory, they set up an experiment, they might study attention, they might study the effects of, how attention works on a screen, but this is all done in a laboratory. And my perspective has always been that to really understand tech use, how it affects our mood, our stress, our attention, and so on, we have to go to where people are. So I create living laboratories. And by living laboratories, what it means is I study people in their real work environments. I equip people with sensors that have used heart rate monitors to measure stress. We, have used wearables. We have used what's called SenseCam cameras to capture people's face-to-face interactions. We log people's computer activity. We probe people continually to get their subjective impressions of what's going on. And what this means is that at any point in time, we can sync together all the data and get a fairly complete picture of what people are experiencing when they're using their tech. And to date, we've studied hundreds of people over multiple weeks in real work environments. And we've studied young people as well. So let me just show you one find in tracking people's attention on a screen over the last 20 years. We started out in 2004. We found that people averaged about 2.5 minutes on any screen before switching. In the last, say, 6 years or so, this average has gone down to 47 seconds on average. For example, in 2021, there was a study by Fatima Akbar, who was my student, and for her dissertation, she studied 50 information workers over a 30-day period and found that their average attention was about 44 seconds. No real difference from 47 seconds. The main point here is that our attention on a screen has diminished over time. It's not surprising. There's just been an explosion of different websites and applications. Social media came on the scene. The smartphone was invented in 2007. So it's not surprising that our attention spans should have shrunk to such an extent. So let me talk to you now about a couple of projects that I've worked on with AI and how they can impact attention. So this project was done while I was at Microsoft Research. I've been a visiting researcher at Microsoft Research for over 10 years. And this is a project that was led by Alex Williams. And he developed SwitchBot. SwitchBot is an intelligent conversational agent. The goal of SwitchBot was to help people stick to their goals. Now, it turns out that attention follows whatever our goals are, right? If our goal is to finish a report, that's what we pay attention to. If our attention is to relax and have fun, then we might go to social media or play a simple game. So with SwitchBot, people were asked at the start of each day to identify two goals: their task goal for the day and their emotional goals. And one thing that's not considered is how important it is to get people to think about their emotional goals. So the task goal, of course, is what do you want to accomplish? The emotional goals, by the end of the day, how do you really want to feel, right? Do you want to feel stressed and pressured, or do you actually want to feel like you have positive well-being? So the good news is that using SwitchBot, where this agent would query people to identify their goals, it worked to help people stay on task. The bad news is that unless people are continually being asked, they forget very quickly what their goals are. So it's really important that goals be identified to continually to help keep people on track. This is another project worked on at Microsoft Research, and this was led by Evelyn Kimani. I was also part of this project. And it's a project to demonstrate that AI can actually help people focus. And this project was a personal digital assistant called Amber. And Amber the system used sensors to be able to detect how long people were working, what they were doing on their computers. I want to mention that the data was stored locally. It was not sent to the company, but it was stored locally. And this agent could detect what people were doing and gave recommendations when it was time for people to take breaks. If they didn't get up and move around, it gave them recommendations when it was time for them to get up back on task. For example, if they were on social media, reading the news. And also, it gave people suggestions on how to schedule tasks based on their own personal attentional rhythms. Everybody has peaks and valleys of attention throughout the day. We have discovered that most people's attentional peaks are around mid morning, 10, 11. And then again, they have another peak about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And what you want to do is you want to schedule those tasks that require the hardest work, the most creativity during your attentional peaks. And so this agent Amber was able to help people manage that. We did a user study and it performed quite well. Now, here's another common use of AI that probably everyone here is familiar with. And that's the use of targeted algorithms. And you probably are all very aware that every time you go on the web, we leave digital traces of the sites we visit, the things we like, the content we interact with. And tech companies and ad remarketing companies capture this information. They create profiles about people. And based on these profiles, ads are targeted to you. And they're quite effective, quite sophisticated in capturing your attention. So, for example, if your profile determines you're an extrovert and is quite good at determining personality, then it's going to direct an ad to you, say an ad for a car. It's going to direct an ad with lots of people around this car. And if the algorithm detects that you're an introvert, then it might show you an ad of an individual driving a car down a country road by themselves. Recommender engines, also based on AI, such as those used with TikTok, are really quite powerful. And they work with what's called a feedback loop. So they understand what people are looking at, what people enjoy, and keep feeding people more and more similar kinds of videos. They're very agile. So if you switch genres of video, the recommend engine will learn very quickly what it is you like. And algorithms are very, very powerful at capturing our attention and keeping us glued to sites. So now I want to talk about a particular kind of AI that's being used actually more and more quite widely in the workplace, and that's large language models, LLMs. And many of you, perhaps most of you, have already tried LLMs. Maybe you're using them regularly. These are things like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic's Claude. So let me start off with some statements here, just to make it clear what AI is not, because a lot of people are seeing it as, this wonder tool. But let's be clear what it's not. It's not empathic. It's not empathic like humans are. If you're working with another human and the human can understand when you're stressed, when you're busy, they know to maybe hold off on giving you more work. AI is not explanatory. Um, it produces results, but it's a black box. Not even software developers understand what AI is doing. Even if we open up the black box, it's just not clear what's going on. So AI produces results, and I'm going to talk about why some of these results may not be very accurate, but we don't know why it's doing what it's doing. AI output lacks human reflection. So if it's producing output, there's no human that's looking through this output to ensure that maybe it's appropriate content or that it might be geared to what a person wants. AI does not understand the user, right? It's unlike humans, where we have a good idea of what the user wants. And so we might give a person content according to what we think they want or need. Importantly, AI's goals are not the user's goals, right? What are AI's goals? Well, it's the goals of the tech company. The tech company, of course, wants to make profit. It might be the goals of the software engineers who designed it, who are designing their values into AI. And their values may not be the values of that you and I have. And also, AI does not have intentionality. So when humans produce something, say artwork, we have an intention about what we want to produce. AI, it's just a machine, right? Even Jackson Pollock, the artist who painted what looked like a random set of colors, he actually had a lot of intentionality in what he was doing. AI does not. Again, it's just a machine. It's just giving output. So let me ask the question of how well can large language models summarize information to make it meaningful for us? Because this is what they're used for quite a bit. So let me talk about an experiment I did with students. And basically, what the students did was they were to summarize articles themselves. Then they had ChatGPT. So this was OpenAI's ChatGPT 3.5. They had that summarize the very same articles. Then they revised their articles according to the output, and then they evaluated their experience. So in total, we had about 600 summaries that were evaluated, 40 students over 10 weeks. So they're very smart students. So they were very sharp in their evaluations. So how well did ChatGPT do? So it was very good at providing facts, was not good at providing any kind of insight or depth. This is a sentence that was illustrative of what the students found. One student reported the summaries lacked the depth and nuanced analysis that only us as humans can provide. The AI output can be humanoid. In other words, it can look robotic at times. And, here's the thing. It looks grammatically correct. It's complete sentences, but it can be just nonsensical, or it does look like a machine wrote it. Here's an example of one of the sentences it produced. Through the use of circuit breakers, it has reduced misinformation within a time interval, which is inoculation, right? If you don't read the output carefully, this is the kind of sentences that you might be actually turning in. And of course, you must be familiar with hallucinations. Hallucinations are errors in large language models, and these were widespread. There's two types of hallucinations. There's factual hallucinations where it contradicts known facts. So if you ask it, who is Amelia Earhart, you might get an answer that says she was the first woman elected to the US Senate, which of course is nonsense. There's also what's called hallucinations of faithfulness. That's where you ask it a question and you get content that might be factually correct, but completely irrelevant to what you've asked. So you ask about the economy of Ireland and you get a response about the economy of Belgium. This is a recent study that was done by researchers at Carnegie Mellon, and they looked at queries that were given to LLMs, real world queries, and then they calculated how many contained hallucinations. The best large language model that they found was ChatGPT 4. That's the paid for version from OpenAI. And that still had about a 19% hallucination rate. A model like Llama 2 has 83% hallucination rate. So hallucinations are quite widespread. So let's talk about some challenges that we might expect using LLMs in the workplace. So consider that, it's so easy to use a large language model to produce output. You ask it, create a summary of all this information or, write a report. So it's a boon for us in terms of being able to manage large amounts of information. But remember what I said initially, right? That people lack the cognitive resources. Our minds are a bottleneck to how much information we can actually process. And one thing that I do worry about when people are not using critical reasoning skills on information on a daily basis is I worry about the loss, that it's a muscle that we have to keep active. And I worry about weakening our critical reasoning muscles. So the human mind is slothful, it's lazy. And there's lots of research that shows that we tend to do what's easiest. And, for example, there's one study that shows that people have a choice between taking an easy path to walk on or a hard path where they use their normal walking gait. They're going to take the easy path, even though it means changing their walking gait. We use cognitive heuristics, simple heuristics to make judgments. We use that all the time. So it makes it easier for us. And so I do worry about our human tendency for laziness and that it's a slippery slope, that it's a lot easier to just simply have ChatGPT or Claude or whatever your favorite LLM is, having them do the work as opposed to humans having hands-on experience. The idea of deep processing is something that I believe we're losing. Deep processing means that when we read information, we don't just read it, but we actually ask questions about it. We connect it to our own knowledge. And I worry that with the use of LLMs, AI in general, that we're losing that ability to really process information in a very careful and deep way. We've all had the experience where we read an article, we read it fast, and then we can't remember what we read, or we go to a lecture, can't remember what we're hearing, because we haven't processed that material deeply. When we really spend time and process information deeply, then we can remember it better, right? It leaves what's called a memory trace in our minds. So the use of LLMs is that it's creating a separation between us and the information. And it's a slippery slope, right? We may believe that we're just going to use it for certain tasks, but because of our tendency for laziness, because it's easy, it's we're using it more and more. We're seeing that people in the workplace are using it more and more, but there is a separation. We're not touching that information anymore. We're simply touching summaries, which may or may not be accurate. I also worry about our motivation when using AI. There's a recent study that I did where we found that when people worked remotely, their motivation was very different than when they worked with people in the workplace. The reason is when we work with other people, uh, people send social signals about being active and working hard. We pick up those signals, and that helps motivate us. When people are working remotely, they don't have those same kinds of social signals. And so they tend to have to find motivation on their own. And a lot of people can get demotivated. And, you can also get demoralized. So that's a danger we fall into. When we're using I also have that same kind of worry that we're interacting with this entity, this machine, and we're not picking up signals that we need to help keep us motivated. I also worry about losing originality with AI produced work. Um, This year, there was a Japanese author, Ri Kudan, who won the top literary prize in Japan for her novel, and part of it was written by ChatGPT. The Authors Guild of America this last year asked for fair compensation because their writing is being used to train LLMs. And the same with the New York Times, they claimed copyright infringement because LLMs are using their articles to train their models. This is a picture by the artist Marcel Duchamp, who took the Mona Lisa, painted a mustache on it, and this leads to the same kind of question: is this really original? So, what's the right model that we need to use in working with LLMs? Should we think about LLMs as a slave, where we simply outsource our work to them? Should we think of LLMs as an autonomous entity that can sort of, quote, think on its own? Or should we view it as a collaborating partner that we can work together with? And I argue that we should think about AI as a collaborating partner. And just as with humans, right? With humans, we need to do additional work to make collaborations work. And I've been looking at collaboration among humans for many, many years. And one of the things that's needed is what's called articulation work. And articulation work is the coordination that's needed, the defining of roles, figuring out how to separate tasks. This is the additional kind of work that's needed when working with AI as a collaborating partner, as opposed to simply sending a prompt and asking AI to create output, right? Creating prompts is a skill that needs to be developed, and there needs to be some background thought before work is just simply outsourced to AI. We need to also understand the AI we're collaborating with. AI is not going to understand us, but we need to understand what AI can do. It's good at facts, and what I cannot do. It's not good at creating any kind of depth in writing or creating insight. That's something that humans can do. So let's end with some takeaways. So first of all, let's talk about the different kinds of skills that AI and humans can bring if we work together in a collaborative partnership. So humans are very good at reasoning with ambiguity. And AI is not. So humans are better at decision making when information is uncertain. AI is better at calculating and in coming up with facts and analyzing data. And so we need to consider what we can bring to the table and what AI can, so that we can form a synergistic relationship. We need to be vigilant against blind trust. So remember, the output looks coherent. It's grammatically correct. It uses facts. And so we have this tendency to simply trust it, and we can get overconfidence in the use of AI. We need to be vigilant against this kind of blind trust. Now, AI, it's advancing rapidly, and in 5 years or so, hallucinations will be much less. But for what it is right now, we need to guard against overconfidence in AI. So we need to keep a human in the loop. Can't just offload material, take the output, turn it in. But we really need to have human intervention and human oversight, right? Again, hallucinations are widespread, but we need to very carefully read what AI is being produced. And it's not just a single prompt where we get output, but it's going to involve a skill in creating multiple prompts until we can get the kind of information that we need. it's really important to create shared conventions for using AI in your group or organization. So you don't want a situation where you've got one person in the team using AI for one purpose and other people aren't using it, or they're using AI for a different purpose. So the organizations need to come up with policy for how AI can be used, for what cases AI can be used, and who should be using AI. So it's very important that there be a shared understanding in the team and also in an organization. So let's not lose our critical thinking when we use uh, AI. We lose our ability to be human. And I want to uh, end with a quote here from Hannah Arendt, who's a philosopher. And she says, people need to think more than just minimally, which is our natural tendency. It's our ability to think independently and actively, to exercise our thinking and judging faculties that make us human. Let's not lose our humanness. So we've come to this cusp in this new technological era, and we need to be able to optimize and preserve our human attention. So I would like to close thanking you and also mention that some of the work that I presented here is in my book, Attention Span. You can find out more about it at my website. I also want to mention that I write a weekly Substack where I write about topics of AI and topics about our lives in the digital age, where you can find here. Thank you very much.
Great, great. Thank you, Dr. Mark. Appreciate it. This was all very insightful, especially, and I guess there's a balance, fine balance we need to maintain between AI and us humans. Very insightful. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here today. And I'm sure there's more folks who might reach out to you at some point after this conversation, via LinkedIn or otherwise, or even directly on your website. So thank you once again.
My pleasure.